Hello everyone and welcome back to another Design Cuts live session, and I am thrilled to welcome back the very talented Jillian and Jordan respectively from Loveleigh Loops. How are you both doing?
We are great. We are so excited to be here talking about one of our favorite topics, Procreate brushes and how to make them.
Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you.
Okay, well then we'll just go ahead and get started.
Perfect.
Okay, so I know the title of today's class is how to make a Procreate brush. We're actually going to show you how to make 3 because we couldn't help ourselves. So we're going to teach you how to make this color changing mono weight brush. Then we'll show you how to adjust it to make it into a dotted brush. And then we will show you a different type of brush, which is a stamp brush. So we'll teach you how to make this leaf one, which is perfect because here all of the leaves are starting to fall. And so we'll show you how to make this one. So it's great if you are here and you have your iPad, you can follow along, or you can just watch and soak in the details and try it out on your own after. Okay, so first of all, the brush library. You probably are familiar with this if you've used Procreate. All of these folders here have all of your different brushes in them. And what's interesting is all of these brushes actually start off with the same base brush that whoever created the brushes kind of knows what settings to change in order to create these different types of textures and brushes. So first of all, if you haven't even explored the default Procreate brush library, make sure you do that because there's so many options here. But for today, we're going to teach you how to make your own. So I recommend to create a new brush set, which is basically a folder for this workshop so that you can have these all in one place and be able to easily find them. Although a really cool recent update of Procreate is they added this recent brush folder, which I know people have been asking for a while. Okay, so to create a new brush set, what you do is inside your brush library, drag down on your list of brush sets here until you see that blue button appear. And then you can tap that to create a new set. It's going to call it Untitled, but I'll just call it BC for Design Cuts. So right now it's empty because we haven't created anything inside. So to create our first brush, we're going to tap on the plus in the top right corner here, and this will give you this screen. So before we continue on, if you have your iPad in the portrait orientation, you might want to turn it to landscape because it does look a little bit different portrait. So this is the brush studio. There are 3 sections. Over here on the left, we have the main categories of settings you can change. And then as you go into each of these categories, you can see all of the fine-tuning details of these settings. Okay, and then so that's in the middle. And then on the right, we have what's called the drawing pad. You can test out your brush over here in the drawing pad. And as you make changes to your brush, they actually show up in real time, which is amazing. So you can see exactly what you're changing with the brush. So this is just the default base brush that you get whenever you create a new brush. And so we need to change specific settings here in order to get the look that we are going for. I always, whenever I create or adjust a brush, I like to do the same thing over here in the drawing pad to get some strokes to see like what I'm changing. So first of all, to clear off anything that you've drawn on this drawing pad, you have to tap on the word drawing pad right here and choose clear. It's not the same as Procreate where you can like clear off layers. So tapping this little button that says drawing pad will clear off the layer. And then whenever I test out brushes, I like to choose a color, especially if I'm doing a color dynamic brush. I'm going to choose pink. So again, that's under drawing pad, pink. And then I like to draw 4 strokes. You'll see why this is important soon, but I like to draw a really hard downstroke, like I'm pressing hard on the screen. Then I like to press lightly on the screen to draw a lighter stroke. And then I do a combination where I go from pressing light on the screen to gradually pressing harder. And then I just do like a random squiggle at the bottom. Right now, you can't see too many differences here between the brushes or between those strokes. You can tell a little bit the first one where you press hard on the screen is more opaque. Oh, something else I should clarify. You should be using an Apple Pencil if you have one. If you use a different stylus, you might not see all of these features that I'm talking about because the Apple Pencil is built for the pressure sensitivity of the iPad. So I know that's a question we always get is why is mine not the same? So if you don't have an Apple Pencil, it might not look the same, but you'll still be able to do a lot of what we're talking about today. Okay, so I've drawn a hard stroke, a light stroke, a gradual stroke, and a squiggle. So to create this mono color changing brush, the first thing we're going to do is go to the color dynamics setting. So over here on the left-hand side, in the middle, color dynamics. And then we want to go towards the third section here, color pressure. We're going to adjust hue. So just kind of watch on screen what happens as I drag this slider around. You can see now we're getting some changes in the color. Isn't it so cool? I remember the first time I did this, I was like, whoa.
Okay, so if your color isn't changing, then the first question is,
are you using an Apple Pencil? If the answer is yes, and your color isn't changing, first of all, make sure that you've changed color pressure, hue. And if it's still not changing, then try drawing on your screen with varying amounts of pressure. So draw a lighter stroke and then draw a harder stroke and change the pressure as you draw, and then you should see the color changing. So what's happening here is basically it's saying that as you press harder on your Apple Pencil, it's going to change the hue a certain percentage. So if you make it 100%, it's going to be rainbow. If you make it a lesser percentage, think of the color wheel. Let's go to the color wheel really quick. Okay, so if your starting color, mine is pink. If I change my color pressure to be 100%, that means it's going to go 100% around the hue ring. In other words, it's going to show all the colors. If I only want to show, or if I choose, let's say 33%, it's going to start with pink and show all of the colors between pink and a third of the way around the color wheel. And so that's why you can change it in a positive or negative direction, because if you do, I think if you do positive, it goes around this way. If you do negative, it goes around this way. Okay, I'm going to go.
Nita had a good comment too. Make sure that you have a color chosen in the drawing pad.
Yes, great. Okay, so
is there a reason beyond what you've already outlined why this wouldn't work for people? Because I can see like Kat and MJ, it's still not changing.
So you've confirmed that you have an Apple Pencil and that you're drawing different amounts of pressure. Let's see, what else could potentially be wrong?
Bill says make sure you have two colors chosen.
Oh no, make sure you have, so in the drawing pad right here, make sure that you have a color chosen, because if you have white chosen, then it won't be able to change the color.
Okay. Let us know if that helps, guys.
Yeah, the hue.
Yeah, and then exactly what Jillian said about make sure you are actually drawing with different pressure, because if you're drawing
it was the color in the drawing pad thing. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
So anyone, if you're on white, that's why it's not working. You need to pick a color.
Yes. Okay, yes. So, and then just a reminder, in case you're joining, if you want to clear off your drawing pad, you have to actually tap drawing pad, clear, and then you can try it out with different colors. I'm using pink just because that's what I always use to test. Okay, so far all we've done is change our color pressure hue, and I'm making mine go to about negative 30%. You can actually tap here and type in your percentage, but you can figure out what look you like the best. If you want it to be rainbow, just make it 100%. All right, everyone good? So the other thing you might notice about this
I think so.
brush, perfect. The other thing you might notice about the brush is if you press with less pressure on your screen here, then the stroke is a little bit transparent. So I'm going to change that in mine. And I think most people usually like to make this change. So we're going to go to the Apple Pencil setting category right here. It's like 2 down from color dynamics. And then the second setting down is opacity. We're going to make max and drag it all the way down to none. Okay, you can see that change happened on the screen. So opacity should be set to 0 under the Apple Pencil setting. Okay, so now we have a fully opaque brush that changes color as you change how hard you're pressing on the screen.
I feel like there are so many different settings that can be changed for a brush that they're kind of like snowflakes. Like everyone in the chat could create a brush and they would all be slightly different. because we all have
Yes.
very, slightly different endless combinations.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. I think we counted there's at least 110, and they actually added a couple more in the recent update. We actually, in our online course, have a spreadsheet that tells you every single setting, what it does at the minimum versus maximum. And the other interesting thing is some of the settings are dependent on each other, which creates even more possibilities. So yeah, you can see we only changed 2 things so far. We changed color dynamics and opacity, and we already have a really fun looking brush.
Amazing.
So the last step is we're going to name the brush. Otherwise, it would just be called Untitled, I think. So under the About This Brush area right here, which is the last setting in the list, here at the top, this is kind of hard to see, but at the very top, it says Untitled Brush. So to name your brush, tap Untitled Brush and delete that name. And I'll just call it, I'm going to call mine Mono Colorful. It's a mono weight brush and it's color changing. Choose done. And then here's a really important step. Make sure you choose done in the top right corner here to actually save all of the settings that you just made. So we'll choose done. And now it should show up in your brush folder as mono colorful. The reason I name colorful in the name is because in the preview, you can't actually tell that it is a color changing brush. So then you can try out your brush on your screen.
Kiki said naming brushes is one of my favorite steps.
There's some people who have really creative names for their brushes. Mine are all like pointed pen, like outline, thick outline. I don't really have creative names.
Flourish stamps, what are those called? I think they're just numbered.
Oh yeah, we have
just
our Flourish stamp ones are just numbered.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so that's our first brush. How are you guys feeling? We're going to create another brush now. And for this one, instead of starting from scratch, which just a reminder to create a new default brush or a new brush from scratch, you tap this little plus in the top right corner. But instead, we're going to build upon this brush that we just created and just tweak a couple of settings to make a dot brush. So the brush that we'll be making now looks like this. Okay, so what you should do now is take the brush that you just created and make a copy of it. So to make a copy, you just swipe it to the left and choose duplicate. It will call it whatever your brush name is with the number 1. And then to open the settings, just tap on the brush again to open up your brush studio. Just a reminder, we like to test out with color. So I'm going to change my color over here by tapping drawing pad, choosing a color, and now you can write with it over here.
So just a little disclaimer, we don't want you to be duplicating other people's brushes that you've purchased and downloaded and then making a small change, calling it your own. Just a little thing we had to say.
That's a very good caveat, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I tweaked the opacity of Elisa Glan's brush. Now I can sell it. Like, definitely.
No.
That wouldn't be allowed.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Okay, so far, all this brush is exactly the same as the other one. And we're going to make it a dot brush. So to do this, all we need to do is inside the stroke path setting, which is the first menu item, there's a setting called spacing. We're going to increase the spacing by dragging the slider to the right. And I think I went around 70%. Yeah, 70%. So obviously, the more you increase the percentage, you can see the distance between each shape increases. So I like mine to be far enough that they don't touch, but not too far that you can't tell it's a line anymore. Okay, so
this is feeling quite psychedelic with the colors moving dots.
Oh, wait till you see this one. If you make jitter, it just kind of goes like all over the place.
What are you doing to my brain?
Okay, and that's actually the only change we're going to make to this brush. So before we save it, let's change the name of it. So we'll go down to About This Brush. It should say Mono Colorful 1 or whatever you named it. Tap on it. And I'm going to call mine something very creative. Dotted Colorful. You can actually, if you actually create your own brush from scratch and you want, you can add your signature here, which is pretty cool. You just sign it. And then if someone were to download your brush, it would have your signature. You can upload a picture of your logo, put your name here just to for attribution and so people know
Amazing.
who made the brush.
Would it be horrendously outside your comfort zone if myself suggested the brush names and we broke your habit of the safe names and we gave you some crazy names? Would that be
I
okay?
love that. You guys are way more
Okay.
creative than I am, so let's do it.
Okay, so I'm going to choose the first one. I'm going to go with dotted disco lights.
Love that. Done.
Cool.
Perfect.
So get those ideas ready as they make the next brush.
Okay, so then to save that, you just choose done up here. Now you can see in your folder, you have the one we made before, mono colorful, which probably needs a new name, and dotted disco lights, which
Yeah, what is your suggestion for monocolorful, Tom, or
Psychedelic
anyone in
worm.
the chat?
You're good. I don't even know if I know how to. Let's see.
Although, sorry,
Yes,
psychedelic's a
once.
horrible word to spell, and I rely on autocorrect.
Dotted.
Oh no, someone put it in the chat.
Is that right?
Who's better at spelling than me?
That must not be right.
Here.
Psychedelic. There it is.
Psychedelic. There we go.
Oh,
Psychedelic.
E.
Actually, you know what would make it look even more like a worm is if you guys don't have to follow along, but if you make the stroke color have some jitter. Oh wait, I have to increase the spacing. Hold on. Let's see.
Oh, I think I get what you're going to do.
Hold on, I gotta make this a little bigger so you can see what's happening. Stamp hue, if we make it like that looks a little bit more wormy.
That looks crazy.
Okay, psychedelic worm, dotted disco lights. And for those of you who are newer to Procreate, if you are drawing with your brush and like right now these dots look really big, you can change your brush size over here on the left with this slider. You just drag it down to decrease the size, and now you can make it smaller. All right.
Do you want to talk about, did you talk about this color and why it's not the same as the color you were using in the drawing pad?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so again, if you're newer to Procreate, sometimes color can get confusing when especially if you're using a color changing brush. So you can tell what color you have selected on your drawing or on your canvas up here in the top right corner. So mine's purple. I think you can see it okay. I'm using purple. So to change the color, you would just tap on here. And before I was using pink inside the drawing studio to test my brush. So it looked more like that in the drawing studio. But that's the cool thing is basically the color changing brush uses whatever color you have selected up here as like the base color. And then as you add pressure, it changes it that percentage that we changed the brush in the settings. Okay, so playing around with different colors up here is fun, but it's also a great way to understand how things are working.
These lines look really effective, even just like this with test strokes. I feel like it would be actually quite easy to create a really high impact piece using these brushes. I could imagine this for like a simple poster design or something like that. Or you could maybe lay a photo or an illustration underneath and then trace it with these dots.
You know what would be cool is if anyone does make any piece using these brushes to share it in the community so we can see a picture. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Okay, so we've made those two brushes, and now we're going to do a different type of brush. So for both of these, you could use, so we do lettering and calligraphy. I'm not sure how much we said of that in our introduction, but we do calligraphy. That's like our main thing, and lettering. So you could use, well, you could definitely use that mono brush for writing letters. For this one, you could as well. But we're going to show you how to make a different type of brush, which is a stamp brush. And it's going to be this leaf one that I sort of previewed earlier. You can see as I stamp down on the screen, it just does one leaf at a time. And I have a setting set so that each time I do a leaf, it changes the direction and the size of it. And it's doing that randomly. It's not based on how hard I'm pressing or anything. So let's make this brush together. All right, so go back to your brush library and we'll create a new brush by tapping the plus in the top right corner. And we're going to first clear off our drawing pad again. Then even if I'm not making, if I don't plan to make changes to the color dynamics, I still always like to test out in a color just in case I do decide to change. Okay, so for this brush, it's going to be a stamp brush. So I'm going to sort of mimic what I'll be using it like a stamp brush, like this. So I'm just going to draw some random dots around my screen. So first, let's start off with making this just a regular dot stamp before we change it into a leaf. So the easiest, it's really easy. All you have to do is up here under stroke path, spacing, increase spacing to 100%. It might be a little hard to see because of the opacity here, but basically now I just have a dot stamp brush. Anywhere you press down, it makes a dot. So if you have spacing set lower than 100, then basically it's like not exactly a stamp because you might move your pen a little bit to create a line. So increasing the spacing just makes it so whatever the first point of impact is with your screen becomes the stamp. So now to understand this better, let's go to the shape tab or the shape setting, which is the fourth one down over here. And you'll see this big white circle. So this is the default shape source for any new Procreate brush that you create. So to change this to a leaf, we're going to tap
We're getting
this.
so many name suggestions already, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, summer.
You guys are amazing.
I think my favorite's Fulltacular Leafy Leaf. Oh, we went dark. Maddie went dark. The death of summer. Damn.
Yeah.
I felt that.
Lovely leaf. Love leaf. Lovely
Lovely leaf. That's amazing.
Oh. Okay, so to change this to a leaf, we're going to change the circle to a leaf. In shape, right next to where it says shape source, there's this really small, hard to see button that says edit. So tap on edit. And then up in the top right corner here, it says import. And there's a few options. We're going to choose source library. You can actually make your own stamp shape and import it. We're not going to go into that right now. So we'll just go to source library. So tapping on that will bring up all of the options that Procreate gives you as shapes that you can use. There's a search function here. So I'm going to type the word leaf to pull up the leaf options. And that you can also scroll through and find a shape that you like better than a leaf if you want. But we're going to go with this one called garden leaf. So tap on that to select it. And then you have to also choose done up here to actually save it. Okay. I'm going to clear off my drawing pad and draw some more stamps again. So before we continue on with like the actual stamp portion of this, I'm going to increase the size of this brush and make it so it's not transparent, just so that we can all see this better, and because we're going to end up doing that anyway. So let's go to our Apple Pencil setting and decrease opacity down to 0 again. So this is just so all of the leaves are fully opaque. And then right under Apple Pencil is the properties setting. We're going to increase the maximum size up to 200%. This will just make it so that your brush can get larger. Actually, maybe we'll go 300%.
I already typed 200.
Sorry, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just increase it. Okay, so here we have the leaves, and as you stamp down, you get leaf, 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 leaf. Okay. All right, let me clear off my drawing pad again. Okay, so when I was showing you the brush, I showed you that the leaves were falling in different directions and they were varying in size. So those are two settings that we're going to change. So let's go down to the shape tab again. And the one we're changing now is scatter. Okay, so really the best way to learn how brushes work is to just like pick a setting and move the slider and see what happens, and then you can understand what's going on. So as I increase scatter, you can see it's taking my individual shapes, which are my leaves, and rotating them around their axis randomly. So I'm going to go with 100% so that basically we can have leaves going in any direction like this. And that just makes it look more like they're falling. Now, to change the size of these leaves, we're going to go to the Dynamics tab, down here. So it's towards the bottom, and there's a section called jitter. First, we'll make the change, then I'll tell you what's happening. So inside of jitter, we're going to increase the size to, let's do 50%. Also, here's a little tip. If you feel like you need to see what's happening in your drawing pad a little bit bigger, you can increase the preview size of your brush. So by going to drawing pad, preview size, and increasing it, so it's almost like you can have a zoomed in view of what's going on your brush. Okay, so now when I tap on the screen, tap, 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 we have leaves falling in different directions, but also the size of the leaves are changing. So having size jitter set to 0 means all of the leaves are the same size. Having size jitter increased to any amount means the leaves will change in size. Having it set to max means it's like going to go from the tiniest possible size to the biggest possible size. So that's why I have it at 50%, because I don't want them to be like too much variation in size, but enough to be noticeable. So jitter means that like the short version is the program basically just decides randomly to change the size of the leaf, not based on pressure. If you go to Apple Pencil, you can change size pressure based on how, or change the size of the stamp based on how hard you press. But for something like leaves falling, I think having it do it randomly is more natural. All right, and then the last thing we'll do is go to About This Brush and name it. I don't know if we had a winner for the brushes. What was the winning brush name? I liked The Death of Summer. That was creative.
Unbelievable was one of them.
Unbelievable, that was good.
You can't beat a good pun. I think Maddie, who said The Death of Summer, also said tree dandruff, which made me laugh.
That's funny. Let's do that. Okay. Tree dandruff.
I can't believe that's the one that won. We had so
It's
many
like a
really
great-
sweet ones.
It's a great visual, and I've never heard that before. That's so funny.
I've never heard it either, but it's pretty clever.
Okay, so then change the name, choose done, and make sure you choose done up here in the top corner. And now you can see a preview of your brush, and you can go ahead and use it. So something interesting or something important to note here is because this is the way that the Procreate library shows brush previews is they just take like a stroke that you would draw with your brush, starting with light pressure. Well, anyway, you can see in the stamp brush that the leaf ends up all the way over here on the left. Whereas if you look at other stamp brushes, like just for example, we have these stamp brushes for our Flourish stamps, all of the stamp is shown in the middle just because it makes it easier to see. So to change that setting, you just tap on the brush and go to Properties. And then here it says Use Stamp Preview, turn that on. And all that does is make it so that it basically tells Procreate this is a stamp brush, so show it as a stamp, not as a stroke in your brush library. So that's like totally optional. And then you guys by now probably know if you want to change any color dynamics to your brush, to your leaf brush, just like quiz yourself for a second. Where would you go to make it so that brush changes color as you're using it? So the answer is color dynamics. And you can change stamp color jitter. So because this is a stamp brush, that would be the one we want to use. If you increase your hue, you can just see what's happening. You can get rainbow leaves or just increase the hue a little bit to get that variation in leaf color as you would see in nature. So mine right now is at 15%, just a little bit of variation in color. And then I'll choose done.
I challenge you both to work these brushes into your future courses and do it with a straight face. You're like, so now we're going to transition from psychedelic worm to tree dandruff.
Oh my gosh, our students would be like, what happened to Jillian and Jordan?
So show what happens if you're not stamping it down. Just like draw a stroke with
Yes.
the stamp brush.
Okay, so
Just
you
so that-
can, you can, if you draw a line, it basically just makes the leaves really far apart. Maybe what would be easier is if we showed it in the drawing pad. So if I draw a line with this, that's what it looks like. If you were to decrease your stroke spacing, you would actually be able to see that path that I drew. Whoa, that looks kind of cool. Cool, it looks like fuzzy. But yeah, so increasing the spacing just makes them so far apart that it doesn't even look like a line when you draw it, but that
Mhm.
allows you to get a stamp instead of like, you know, like when you use a real ink stamp and you stamp it down and then you like smudge it and then it doesn't look like the shape. So
Yeah,
that's to sort of like avoid that problem.
got it.
So for those of you wondering, like, what are some other use cases for why you might want a stamp brush? So lots of the, like, in my mind, some of the most popular Procreate brushes that Design Cuts has for sale are those like template brushes. Like, I mean, you all know Lisa Glan's her character templates and like Ian and Stefan's grid builder. We have our Flourish stamp brushes. So it's basically like a template that you can use. So if you have an idea for a template,
So for example, like if you're always putting your logo on something, or if you want to redraw a shape over and over, you can just draw it once and then turn it into a stamp. So this is what our Flourish stamps looks like if you are familiar with calligraphy.
yeah, so our Flourish stamps, we have a bunch of different types of flourishes in a stamp brush that you can then stamp down on your screen and resize it and use it as like a template or like a base. So that's one use case for a stamp brush other than having a like element like you saw with the leaf that you would want to draw over and over. Because I know some people, they think of Procreate brushes as just being like the lettering ones or the texture ones. And yeah, so that's hopefully that helps explain why you might
the
want to use
greatest
a
guides
stamp brush.
though.
Yeah, greatest guides.
Exactly. Exactly.
If your brush studio looks different, if the, like a few of the settings are different, we might you might need to update your Procreate app.
Yeah, so they just in the most recent update, there's 2 new brush settings, stabilization, which those of you who are very familiar with the brush studio is basically taking streamline out of stroke path and giving you more options. And then there's also materials, which is related to the new 3D models that you can work with. Honestly, we haven't had time to dig into the 3D stuff, but I know that there's some new settings you can change for like metallic and materials that relate to the new settings.
I feel like every time Procreate do an update, they nail it, and the new features are always really cool.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, there's so much that we haven't even, like those of you who I know for brushes specifically, there's just some like very small changes they've made that make it so much easier, like your recent brushes, or I just discovered this today on your size slider. You can set basically a benchmark. So like if I want 20% to be one of my sizes that I always go back to, you just set it to 20 and then you press that little plus button. And then now if you change your brush size and you want it to go back to 20, instead of having to like fine tune it or find it, you just tap on that and it takes it right to 20. So very small things like that, plus some more accessibility features to make like the palettes easier to see. Yeah, they just nail it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pam, if your template is white, how do you modify it to change the color? So if you're talking about in the brush studio, then to be able to visualize the color, you're going to have to go to drawing pad and then choose one of the colored dots at the bottom so that you can see what the color looks like. And then you'll have to redraw with a new color. Ginger's asking how to get the brush icon within the brush library larger. So that's under the preview, the properties.
Mm-hmm. Properties and then preview. So let's just make it extreme, make our preview size down, and then you can see now now the leaf is tiny. I see a question, is the default background color always black? No. So I set my background color of my canvas to black because it shows up better on camera here. To change that, the default is white. So to change that, you would just open your layers, which is this button right here, and then tap on background color, and then you can change it to a different color. So that's the reason I have black, is because it's easier to see on camera. Okay, I saw some comments of people who want to learn how to make calligraphy brushes.
Yes. Well, people were saying both, but since we've been talking about stamps, why don't we just show a few calligraphy brushes?
Okay. Okay, let's see. So let's create a new, well, first let me show you like what a calligraphy brush is for those of you who are maybe newer to calligraphy. So I'll just go to this set of brushes that we've created and use one called Brush Pen. So in calligraphy, I can never think of anything to write when I'm okay. Hi. Let's write hi. Okay, here's an example of calligraphy done on an iPad, you can see we have thick strokes and thin strokes. The way that I'm getting that difference is by pressing harder on my thick strokes and lighter on my thin strokes, which is exactly how it works on paper, for those of you who do calligraphy. So to make a calligraphy brush, we need to change that setting. And then you'll also notice that the tops of my letters have some flatness to them. So let's go back to that brush library and create a calligraphy brush. So create a new brush up here. And we're not going to change any color dynamics in this one. Again, I always like to draw a heavy stroke. Okay, I'll just use a color. Heavy stroke, so pressing hard on my screen, pressing light on my screen, and then some sort of gradual transition. And then since this is a calligraphy brush, I'll just write a word down here. Again, this is just so we can see what's changing as we change the settings. We'll go to the Apple Pencil setting, and we're going to change size pressure. I'm going to increase it up to, we'll go 50% for this, or let's go 60%. 60%, and then I'm also going to decrease opacity down to 0%. Okay, so you can see right away that we have, now there's a difference in our size of our stroke, which is what I showed you on screen before with the word high. We have thin strokes and thick strokes, and pressing harder gives you a thick stroke, pressing lighter gives you a thin stroke. So that's the first setting to change. Then in order to get that flatter top on your letters here, we're going to change the shape source. So because right now the shape source is a circle, that's the top of your stroke is going to match the top of your shape source. So we'll need to change this to make it a little bit flatter. So we're going to go to Edit, then Import, Source Library, and find something that's like a little bit flatter on top. We don't, I'll just tell you the one that I like to use is Slim Oval, because it's still going to give you a nice stroke, but it's not quite as rounded on the top. Okay, so I'm going to change my source for my shape to Slim Oval. Okay, and then don't forget to press Done. And let's do that again. So now when you draw your strokes, you can get that flatter top. You can still get a difference between thick and thin. And it looks more like calligraphy. So there's a couple things you're probably seeing. If you look closely, it looks like the edge is sort of textured, which is cool. A lot of brushes have built-in texture like that. But if you want to get rid of that spacing between the ovals, we'll need to go up to Stroke Path and decrease the spacing, because that's basically taking your ovals, making them closer together so you don't get that, like that's a dramatic version of what you were seeing before. So we're going to decrease the spacing to smooth out the edges of your curves. Okay, so this is a pretty basic calligraphy brush. Those of you who have heard of Streamline before, I know some people think it's controversial, but I like it. I think it's a good tool to have in your tool belt to be able to know how to use it. So we're going to go to the Streamline or the stabilization setting.
And this is actually new, right?
Yeah, this is brand new. So amount is the first setting down here. I was just playing around with this morning. So if you increase the amount of streamline, well, okay, if you set it to max, which I would never recommend having it at max, you can see it just kind of destroys what you've created. If you have a little bit of streamline, like 20%, basically what it does is it stabilizes your curves so that they look a little nicer. So if you draw like a stroke like that, it stabilizes the curves, smooths them out, just makes it look a little bit more refined, which is great if you're just getting used to this. Or if you, like on your iPad, because the screen is glass, your pencil can slip easily and it just like takes a lot of focus to get smooth strokes. So having a little bit of streamline will help self-correct some of that. I could go into more detail, but I think you guys get the point. Okay, so then lastly would just be naming the brush. I don't know if this one lends itself to having a creative name, but I'm sure you guys won't disappoint.
I'm sure we can challenge the community on that. So we got a basic calligraphy brush. What are we going to call it? Maddie says the flamingo brush because of the color. I would say color independent, because people using it could change the color to anything. But what are we feeling for this?
I wonder if there's anything. I mean, like if there's any other setting we could change to make it a little more unique than just a calligraphy brush, maybe that would give some ideas. Let's talk about grain really quick, just for fun. So right now, all of our strokes have a solid, or just like a solid line. If you want to add some texture to it, that's where you go to grain. Oh wait, can you guys still hear us?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's not like quick to see. Stop. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay. I don't know if our Okay, so for grain source, if you go up to edit grain source, import source library, you can choose from all of these different types of grains that Procreate gives you. The more white and more solid it is, the more, or like the less texture it will appear to have. So I'm going to choose, let's go with this one called Army, and then choose done. So now when I write with my brush, it has that pattern to it.
Oh, that's pretty cool. By the way, I think my favorite name suggestion is Smoothie from Cat.
I like that too.
Oh,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
I like that. I feel like that doesn't fit anymore with this texture I added. Let's change the texture. Okay, so well, you guys can see like how fun it is to just play around with adding different shape sources and different grains just to see like what happens. So maybe clouds will make it look prettier.
So I have a question actually. What makes a brush sellable from a legal perspective, right? Because I'm guessing you couldn't just open Brush Studio, make a line and sell it, or could you? But it would just be a bad brush. How do you ensure it's unique enough? And if you don't know the answer, again, that's completely fine.
No, that's a really good question. I think one way of making your brush unique is by mimicking something in real life. So for example, I know that there are some artists that make like alcohol ink brushes that they actually scan in their texture that they created on paper and then turn that into the grain source. And I would say that would be very unique. Do you want to show, so what we're making now is just a very basic calligraphy brush. Do you want to show some of the other calligraphy brushes that we have made, just to get an idea of like different ways you can even use a calligraphy brush?
Ooh,
yeah,
cool.
So this one has like a built-in shadow to it. So for all of the brushes that we sell brushes, but for all the brushes that people sell, what I would guess is that they actually like figured out how to use the Brush Studio and created their own brushes from scratch and didn't just like copy a default brush, although that's a good way to understand how they work. For your question of just like, if you make a new brush and just like sell that, like, I don't know legally if that's okay, but I feel like no one would buy it because it's just like a plain brush. Although there's a lot of people who don't know that you can even customize brushes or make your own brush in the brush library, which now all of you guys are ahead of that. So yeah, I guess legally, I'm not sure, but sellability, as long as it looks unique and as long as you've put in the effort to actually figure out how the brush works.
Yeah, and changing the settings in a way that's getting to a result that you want. So for example, the one that is shown right here is a shadow brush. And so Jillian created this brush by understanding how the settings work to create this automatic shadow. And there's some,
actually in our course, we have a whole lecture a whole module that's about how to create your own unique brush. And it's specific. We have like a worksheet using real art supplies. Like Nita just commented, I create from real art materials, brush pens, and pointed.
A lot of the best-selling brushes are from materials actually. So I'm really glad that you have a module in your course about that. But could we maybe talk about that for a second, about the course? Because I feel like you've shared so much in this session today. It would be remiss of me not to dive into that course at the end.
Yeah, of course. So the course that we have is called How to Make Custom Procreate Brushes. Very creative name. You guys need to rename it for us. Yeah, we always say that we teach people who don't think they're creative how to be creative because we don't feel creative ourselves. Okay, but anyway, that's besides the point. So in the course, we walk you through how to create 4 different types of brushes. So you actually got a really good preview of how calligraphy brushes work, but then we take them further and show how to do things like add a shadow, how to make them like a pointed pen or a brush pen. So those of you who use those tools in real life know that they behave differently. Then the next section talks about how to make outline brushes. and variations on those. So here's an example of a colorful outline brush, which is so much fun to use. So for each of
Very
these
cool.
brushes that we show you how to use, it's basically the same process that we went through today of create your base brush and then tweak all of these settings and why to tweak all of the settings so you understand what you're doing to get this desired outcome. Okay, so we have these outline brushes. Then one of my favorite sections is the colorful brushes. So you got a preview of how color dynamics work, but this one is a watercolor. Hold on, let me pick a better color.
Change the
Color.
background to white. Let's see what that
Um,
looks like.
This one's a watercolor brush, so it, oh, sorry, it changes stroke color. It's almost like if you were using real watercolor and dipping your brush into different colors of ink. So that kind of happens automatically. So we show you how to do stuff like that, where it's like creating unique effects using the properties of the brushes
Did
themselves.
you show the ribbon one?
Yeah, I'm going to show the ribbon one. So the ribbon one is fun. It's, let's see, I usually do this on white. So it's, okay, yeah. So the ribbon brush is like you've all seen ribbon lettering where it looks like a ribbon. So we show you how to create that brush, and then we have a section on textures, which is really interesting. So
yeah, there were some comments about seamless patterns and how to create seamless textures. So this is an example of a seamless texture.
Yeah, seamless meaning that you also, if you lift up your pen and put it down somewhere else on the screen, then it still matches up.
Can you show the one with stripes?
Oh yeah,
The seamless one.
this one's cool. So this is a stripe pattern, and then some other types of textures like a confetti brush. So basically our course walks you through how to make all of these brushes from scratch. There's a bonus section on magical brushes, which are like the ones that look
Ooh, that looks fun.
glowy and glittery.
Wow.
And this one has projects of like things you get, lettering projects with templates for you to trace so that you can actually
make the color more saturated.
Yeah. Nebula brush is fun. Stardust. And so basically, yeah, so we teach you how to make the brushes, and then we also do a deep dive in the brush studio of every single brush setting and why they work the way they do.
Amazing. Well, we can't wait to have you back in the very near future. You absolutely killed your live session over our birthday, and you always do when you join us. So thank you. Truly, I think you're one of the favorite sets of teachers out of everyone that we invite on here at Design Cuts. So thank you so much, and we'll see you soon, hopefully.
All right,
All right,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for having us.